So would you take your Bibles and turn to Matthew chapter 5? Matthew 5. This is number 2 in a summer sermon series on living the good life. And we're looking at the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus' manifesto. So find Matthew chapter 5. If you didn't bring a copy of the Word, we have one in the pew pocket there, and also the version that I'll be reading from will be on the screen behind me. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain. And after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." This is the word of the Lord. Now I'm going to ask you to use your imaginations for a moment. I'm going to ask you to imagine you're not in church. That maybe you're on a cross-country flight, or maybe you're sitting around a fire pit and out in your backyard, or maybe you're on the deck of your house and you just have some friends over. And I want you to just imagine a conversation. Who would you secretly, knowing that the preacher won't hear this, knowing that the deacons won't hear this, knowing that no one at church necessarily is going to hear this, but who would you secretly nominate as a person or a people with whom God might be just a little irritated? And if truth were known, you secretly are hoping that they won't find favor with God unless they change their behavior and look like you. Who is that for you? Maybe they're people of color. Maybe they wear their pants a little bit too low in the back and their hats are on sideways and they've got too many tattoos showing. Maybe they have body piercings that you don't appreciate. Or maybe they wear a button-down Oxford shirt with a power tie. Or maybe they have a clipped northeastern accent. Or maybe they have a thick southern drawl. Maybe they have a Confederate flag flying outside their house. Maybe they are loud and proud of their sexual orientation. Maybe they wear scarves over their faces and turbans on their head. Maybe they're chronically addicted. Maybe they're obese. Maybe they're homely. Maybe they're gorgeous. Maybe they're young. Maybe they're old. If you weren't at church today, who would you secretly nominate as a person or a people with whom God might be irritated? Whoever that is for you is exactly who Jesus was talking about in the passage I read to you a moment ago. And he says, blessed are they. They did not know the Bible. They did not own land. They could not manage their life very well. They had issues. Their kids were unruly. Their teenagers went crazy. They had no spiritual qualifications at all. They had no credentials. They were religious. They were illiterate religiously. Now, there are a lot of folks like that today. I don't know if you know this. Gallup did a poll and tried to find out if Americans knew something about the Sermon on the Mount. Do you know what most Americans, do you know who most Americans think preached the Sermon on the Mount? Billy Graham. 24% believe that it's called Sermon on the Mount because it was delivered from horseback. That's in this country. Some of you just learning stuff right now. Jesus wasn't on a horse. People sitting on the side of this mountain did not know the Bible. And no one's asking them to teach Sunday school. No one's nominating them to be a deacon. And if you go back to chapter 4 and you read all the activity that Jesus was involved in before chapter 5, you begin to see that Jesus spent a lot of time loving and healing and serving and touching the untouchables of his world. So let's just assume that as Jesus sits down on the side of this mountain and the crowds gathered, they're just still following him. Disciples are interspersed here and there, but the crowds that he's been ministering to all through chapter 4 are now on the side of the mountain in chapter 5. And let's just imagine that Jesus sees someone in the crowd and he locks eyes with them and he remembers them. And there's someone that has just been, not too long ago, brought to him and he's helped them. Let's say it's a man who has been brought to Jesus because he was demon-possessed. He was emotionally tormented. He's out of his mind. He's a spiritual zero. He's never been a part of a faith community. No one would ever ask this demonized man about his thoughts about God. But now here he is right before Jesus, and he's calm and he's in his right mind. Why? Because even though he's done nothing to deserve it, Jesus has touched his life and realigned everything inside of him so that it was rightly aligned with God. For the first time in his life, he thinks clearly. And Jesus says, "Stand up, sir." Jesus says, come close. Face the crowd. And he says to the crowd, you want to know who's blessed? You want to know who has the favor of God? This man. This man right here. The one that was not in his right mind. The one that's a religious disaster. He's the one. He's welcome. And the guy just chest is out, smile on his face. For the first time in his life, there's no shame. There's no feelings of insecurity. He's swollen with grace and love. And he goes to sit down with the crowd. And the crowd are all looking at him like, that guy? That guy has God's favor? Well, just last week he was. The crowd starts to think, you mean one of us could be blessed? One of us could find favor? Jesus, is there anybody else in the crowd? Look around, is there anybody else? And maybe Jesus locks eyes on a middle-aged woman who's been sad all her life, who's been depressed. And maybe she's depressed because she's unable to have children. That is always a sad thing, but it was doubly bad in the days of Jesus. Because if she does not have children, then something's wrong with her, the people would think. And let's just assume that maybe her husband has died. Now here's this woman who's middle-aged, no children and no husband. What does her future hold for her? You know what it holds for her. The only thing that she possibly could do, because there was no social network, there was no governmental programs, what could she possibly do in order to sustain herself? The only thing left to her probably was prostitution, but she's getting older, and that prospect is even starting. She is a hopeless case. She is a sad, broken-hearted woman. And Jesus says, "Oh, man, come, stand up, come here." And he puts his arm around her. And he looks at the crowd and he says, "You want to know who's blessed? You want to know whom God's favor is upon? It's this lady. This lady will know a depth of the presence of God that very few will ever taste. This one right here." And suddenly our eyes light up. She starts to sense this feeling of hope. I'm favored of God? Even me? What does this mean? You want to know who's blessed, Jesus says? Those who mourn. Not because it's a good thing to mourn, but because the reality of the presence of the kingdom is coming down to the mourning, and they shall be comforted right now. And then she goes to sit down. And then Jesus says, James, John, come here. Keep your eye on her. Because we're going to take care of her. Because in the new community that we're establishing, this kingdom down on earth, one of the core values is to care for widows. So watch out for her. Okay? Blessed are the mourn, for they shall be comforted. And then Jesus looks at maybe a homeless Samaritan, and he says, "Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the people who've been pushed around and shoved around and who have no prospects." Now this comes right out of Psalm 37:11. I don't know if you know that about the Psalms, but this Psalm 37 is a story about the struggle between the people who have land and the people who do not have land. And the people who do not have land are always kind of put in subjection to the people who do have land. In fact, verse 11 of chapter 37 says, "The meek shall inherit the earth." This is the powerless. This is the landless. They were the peasants. And in Jesus' day, and it's still true in the Middle East, whoever owns the land has the power. It's a big deal. Now, in Jesus' day, you know who owned the land? The Romans did, or the wealthy Jewish people. The aristocrats did. But not the majority on that hillside. These are landless people. These are sharecroppers at best. And Jesus says, "Blessed are you. You will inherit the earth. Blessed are the shy. Blessed are the timid. Blessed are those who have no leverage and no connections and who are not assertive at all." Now, Jesus is not teaching here for us to be shy and to be timid and to be non-assertive. That's not the point of the Beatitudes. He's saying, congratulations, those of you who have no leverage. Congratulations to those of you who are living in a trailer. Congratulations to those of you who will never own your own home. Congratulations, you will inherit the earth. Seriously? Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, because they don't have any righteousness of their own. Nobody's nominating them to be a deacon. They didn't go to seminary. They couldn't tell you where the book of Malachi is. They don't know anything about the Bible. But now righteousness is available to them. Blessed are the merciful, Now, these are the people who had gotten the shaft from somebody. These are the people that got done dirty, and they could never get even. There was no eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth with these folks. They lost a tooth, and there was no retaliation. They lost an eye, they could not do anything about it. They couldn't get even. They couldn't respond with assertiveness if they wanted to. They couldn't repay an injustice. And Jesus says, blessed are you who have decided to give mercy instead of retaliation. The kingdom has now come to people just like you. God's presence, God's favor, God's mercy is available to the likes of you. Now, this is an important thing to remember, that the Beatitudes are not instructions on how to be blessed in this life. That's not what they're designed to be. They are not instructions on how to do anything. Some of you have heard sermons many times in your life where the preacher has said, if you want the blessed life, you need to be like this. That's not the intention of these Beatitudes. These Beatitudes are not instructions on how to be anything. The Beatitudes are designed to shock people into realizing that now the blessing, living the good life, that we all drive ourselves crazy to try to obtain, is now available to us through the person of Jesus Christ. If you connect yourself to Jesus, then the favor of God, the blessing of God, all of that is available to you. All you got to do is step into it. No one can shut you out. No one can say you have to stop doing this in order to enjoy this. That's just not how the kingdom works. That's how religion works. Did you hear that? Religion says stop behaving this way, then you get to be in the church, in the group, in the good place. But Jesus said, no, just come. Just come. We'll worry about the stopping stuff later. Just come. You're welcome here. What about today? If Jesus were giving these Beatitudes, what would they sound like if they were handed out today? Who are the people that our culture says are shut out of the good life? Who are the people who get the message in our culture and on our playgrounds and in our classrooms, in our Sunday school classes, in our media, that they don't matter? I have a list. I'm going to read it to you. This is Joe's version of the Beatitudes for 2018. Blessed are the geeks. Blessed are the nerds. Blessed are the wimps. Blessed are you when you have dandruff and blemishes and all manner of bad breath. Blessed are those who have no fashion sense. Blessed are the uncoordinated. Blessed are the middle managers. Blessed are the wrinkled. Blessed are the anxious. Blessed are the unemployed. Blessed are you when you have no fashion sense. Blessed are the conservatives. Blessed are the unemployed. Blessed are the anxious. Blessed are the river rats. Blessed are the homeless. Blessed are the deplorables. Blessed are the dropouts, the burnouts, and the left outs. Blessed are the chronically angry. Blessed are the liberals. Blessed are the sexually addicted and the sexually frustrated. Blessed are the mentally ill. Blessed are the HIV positive. Blessed are the parents who failed. Blessed are the children who ran away. Blessed are the divorced. Blessed are the barren. Blessed are the pregnant out of wedlock. Blessed are the failures. Blessed, blessed, blessed. Is that good news to any of you? Because some of you are in that group. Isn't that good news? Here's the kingdom now. It's available to you through Jesus. And as we feel this welcoming, then we can be welcoming to others. So blessed are the poor. Blessed are the hungry. Blessed are the grieving. Blessed are the hated. Now, I have to answer a question because a lot of us look at those words and we say, you know what? I don't really fit in any of these categories here. What about the people that don't fit into these categories? What about the well-off and the well-fed and the well-pleasured and the well-spoken of? Well, of course, the kingdom is available to them. It's available to everybody. But Jesus does give a warning here that I need to hear, and maybe you need to hear. Often people who are well off, well fed, can sometimes mistake the blessed life for the well-managed life. Are you still listening to me? The well thought of, the well-dressed life, the well-educated, the well-spoken of. These are the ones that have been clearly blessed of God. And then what happens is those of us who can manage our lives well, those of us who have never gotten addicted to any substances, those of us who do not struggle to make our bills, those of us whose children grew up to be successful, super successful, we tend to think, you know what? If people would just live their life a little bit more like I lived, they'd live the good life too. And do you hear what's happening now? Now there's this spirit of elitism and spirit of condescension and spirit of superiority among us. That doesn't happen on purpose. Usually people who develop this spirit of elitism do not even know that it's happening. But they kind of create this little club that if people would just be like us, then their life would be a lot better. Let me tell you how subtle this is. I had a conversation with a man this last week. And I'm not going to tell you all the details of it, but we were talking about a small town in this state and a small church in this state and the power brokers in that small church who are making the life for the pastor difficult. I don't know if you knew that actually happens anywhere, but it happens in this other church in another part of the state. And here's what this man said. He said, these power brokers, they don't realize they're big fish in a little pond. They're in a tiny little town. They're nobodies. Put them in Denver and they would be nobodies. But they're a big fish in a little pond and they think they're somebody, but they're nobodies. Put them in Denver, they're not anybody. He said this outside of my little church in my little town. Do you hear what he was saying? What was he saying? What was the implication of what he's saying? People in little towns are little people. That's what I heard. And I think it's subtle that we can start talking about the dope sellers, the dope growers as those kinds of people out there. And then somebody overhears that, who maybe that's how they make a living. And now they know that they're never going to be in that group because of what they do. That's legal. Whether you think it's right or not, it's legal. We have to be careful, I think, about no trespassing signs that we inadvertently put up in our groups. Now, in your house, there's a little mat that gets put out on the ground at the front door. It's a little mat. What do people do on that mat? Well, what do we want them to do on that mat? We want them to wipe their feet. But usually on this mat in front of the front door, there's one word. What's the word? Welcome. And what that humble little mat is saying to all of those who approach is, we are not neutral about your presence here. We know you're here. We welcome you into this place. Muddy feet or no, we're glad you're here. Sometimes at homes and in lives and even in religious communities, there are other kinds of signs. I think I might have told you about the religious place, and it had a huge fence around it to keep people out. And there was a sign on the gate, Keep out, beware of dog, no trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, signed Little Sisters of Mercy. So it happens in churches. When Jesus began to form this little community out of the group that's on the side of this mountain, it's like there's this giant welcome mat in front of Jesus, so that wherever he went, he would say, "You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome here. You want to follow me? You're welcome here. Welcome to the poor. Welcome to the slaves. Welcome to the Pharisees. Welcome to the Gentiles. Welcome to the sinners. Welcome to the prostitutes. Welcome to everybody. You want to follow me? Welcome. I'm glad you're here." Everybody's welcome. Nobody's perfect. Anything's possible with God. And see what happens. Well, people will look at that community and they'll look and see who's there. And they'll say, well, if they can be there, maybe I can be there. If that person's let in, maybe I could be let in. You know, if it could happen to him, it might could happen to me. I want to be a part of that group. Now, a lot of people rejected Jesus. You know that, right? A lot of people rejected Jesus. But it was because they didn't want to be in that kind of kingdom. It was never because Jesus ever gave them the impression that they weren't kingdom material. Because for Jesus, everybody was kingdom material. Everybody's welcome. Nobody's perfect. Anything's possible. I think about the relationship that I have, and there have been moments in my life when I've put up a no trespassing sign, and I know Jesus would have rolled out a welcome mat. Not long ago, I met with a pastor. In fact, my wife, this morning, she told me, because I'm going to the Southern Baptist Convention, and I have a friend that my wife says, it's not good for you to hang out with him. In fact, she told me today, do not hang out with him, because you become somebody different. He brings out the worst in me. You probably don't have friends like that, but long ago I met with a pastor, a different guy, and I began to speak ugly about another brother in Christ. I began to paint a picture of him to my friend that made him look shallow and silly. I was driving, and I had to pull over. My wife was somewhere distant, and I texted her this message. I said, I spoke ugly about a pastor to another pastor, and I feel horrible about it. I'm an idiot. Please pray for me. And she replied, I know. Nobody needs the kingdom more than Joe Chambers. Nobody. I have thoughts that cause me to blush. I'm in a perpetual state of repentance. I'm daily, sometimes hourly, in need of a course correction. I fall so far short of King Jesus. Nobody in this room needs the kingdom more than I do. But do you want to know who's blessed? I'm blessed. $53 ago, he came to me. He said, I want you to be in my kingdom. Come, little fella. Come. And I did. You want to know who's blessed? You are. You are. You are. You are. Not because you have a well-managed life, not because you have a lot of resources, not because you're well off or well fed or well dressed or well educated, but because, truth be known, underneath all of that stuff, you're a mess. just a mess. The kingdom is coming. And if you will receive the King, then you'll feel the favor of God. Everybody, every background, every education, every culture, every language, everybody, God says, you're welcome. That's good news. I don't know if you've ever read Brennan Manning. He was a Jesuit priest, Catholic priest. Found out that he just couldn't sustain that celibate lifestyle, so he got out of being a Catholic priest and got married and lived a life of spiritual. He wrote the book, The Ragamuffin Gospel. He had a problem. He was one of the more influential Christian leaders of the last generation, especially among pastors. In his last book before he died, he said this: "Blessed is the inmate who promised the parole board he'd be good, but he wasn't. Blessed is the dim-eyed who showed the path to others but kept losing his own way. Blessed is the liar, the tramp, the thief, otherwise known as the pastor, speaker, and author. Blessed is the disciple whose cheese slid off the cracker so many times he said, 'To hell with cheese and crackers.' Blessed is the younger and the elder prodigals who've come to their senses again and again and again and again and again." The favor and the flourishing of God has come to all those who feel left out of ever living a good life. That's good news. The good news of the kingdom. So here's the question. Are you in the kingdom? Or are you trying to make it on your own? Are you in it? Pastors learn over time how to read a congregation based upon how they listen. And some of you hide things really well. Some of you pay close attention with your face, but I know your hearts are far from the room. Some of you, I wonder sometimes, I really do, I wonder if some of us think, well, wait a minute, I got saved when I was 7, I was baptized. I'm good. But let me ask you something. Is there any way that you have a no trespassing sign in front of your spiritual house as opposed to a welcome mat? And if there's a no trespassing sign like there is for me sometimes, we need to do something about that inside. Thank you, Jesus, for your grace, your mercy. Thank you that 53 years ago you welcomed me into your family. And in the meantime, Lord, over the last 50 years, I have stiff-armed so many people. I have said so many things that made other people feel unwelcome into your kingdom. I suppose I've probably kept more people out than I've ever helped get in, because I want them to be like me. I want them to have the same values I have. Instead of being like you, and you look around a crowd and say, no, I'll take you, I'll take you, I'll take you, I'll take you. God help me to be more like you. Help me to be a person who welcomes everybody into your kingdom. That's my prayer.